everybody. Welcome to the Abroaders Travel Podcast, your weekly meetup with thousands of entrepreneurs, hustlers, creators, nomads, ninjas, wanderers, and world changers, all seeking to build the skills and connections to live a life without borders. If you want to learn more about what we do or download our entire podcast archive, check out the website, abroaders.com. Happy Thursday morning, and welcome to another episode of the Abroaders Podcast. I'm Eric here with AJ in Austin, Texas. Today is Thursday, December 14th, 2017, and this is episode 199. How's it going, AJ?
It's going all right, man. Doing well. Man, we talk about the weather all the time, but this is noteworthy. It snowed in Austin last night, and I don't know like the historical data, but like
it's
being new to Austin, I just Googled, like, does it normally snow in Austin, Texas? And the first thing I got was a Quora post, and the first answer was, generally once every 10 years or so, it'll snow for a couple of days. So I don't know how accurate that is, but I mean, damn it, it's like left Michigan to get away to get some warm weather, and we got dumped on with snow. But,
so my wife is from Brazil, and she lives in a part of Brazil that's super tropical, always warm, barely gets below 70 degrees, you know, if you're lucky, even in the winter. And
that's beach weather.
So she was super excited. This was the first time she had ever seen snow falling. And so we went outside, and the thing that blew me away is there were so many other people, obviously from Texas, that were out taking pictures and like playing in the 1/4 inch of powder that was accumulating. So definitely some fun stuff. Today's show, we've got a checklist for you guys for the end of the year. A lot of the benefits associated with rewards cards, and especially elite status, and some airline goals as far as making the qualifying activity that you need to get a bunch of benefits next year, all come due on December 31st. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to run through a checklist for you guys of some of the things that you want to be aware of and share some of the examples. A lot of this is related to cards that you get extra benefits that just basically get deleted if you don't use them.
Right.
And in many cases, there's an easy opportunity to, even if you don't have a purchase that you need to make, you can buy a gift card or do something else.
That's what I was going to say. You know, there's going to be some situations where we'll get into it, maybe something around status, it's too late and you're not going to have enough spend to, work around that. But there's a lot of entitlements that you have with these cards that you can put to work with, just like Eric said, something even as simple as buying a gift card, or even gifting to a friend if they're going to be doing some travel and you've got an upgrade or something, things like that.
So we're going to get to that in just a second. Also wanted to let you guys know we've got a very cool interview coming up at the end of the show.
Yeah, so I had a chance to connect with Dan of Bolt Collective. We'll get into the interview and he'll share his story a little bit, but Bolt Collective is a pretty cool community travel concept. This is a new thing. It's a little bit of an experiment. Dan himself would not promise you really anything other than his best effort on this, but it's a pretty cool project that tries to harness collective purchasing power to unlock deals that people can't get themselves for these really cool experiences. And Dan's had a startup very similar to Abroaders in the same space. He's a good guy, so definitely worth a listen if you're wanting to hear some travel stories and a little bit more about this new group travel concept.
Yeah, very cool. All right, so all the links for today's episode will be at abroaders.com/199. As I said, we're also going to be taking a little break for the holidays. We may be back at some point if anything big happens as far as news and updates. We don't have anything super important. We had to record this one a little bit early this week, so we don't have anything news-wise for this week's show. Plan on us being back after the first of the year for episode number 200, our bicentennial, if you will. If we get a chance, if anything super important happens, we'll try and break in with a mini episode to give you guys an update. But the better way to stay on top of everything that is changing in the points and miles world is to head over to abroaders.com and sign up for the Abroaders community, where we're going to be sending out alerts and updates as things happen. So that's the best way.
Yep, and you can see that directly at abroaders.com/community and think of it as a super affordable way to get everything you need to win the miles game on your own. So,
all right, let's give some end of the year advice here. So first item up is using credits from premium travel cards. So generally the way this works is that in certain categories of spend, you get some money back with these cards. The bank will just essentially give you a statement credit or a refund for certain types of purchases. And these are use it or lose it. And almost all of them that exist out there are the ones that end on December 31st. And you get a fresh set of credits for the new year. So you got to use them now. First up is Amex Platinum and the Business Platinum card. Both of these cards have a $200 airline fee credit. The interesting thing about this one, it's not nearly as flexible as the other ones I'm going to talk about in a minute. You have to pick which airline you want to use it with, so you have to declare that to Amex. It's really easy to do that online through the secure message or chat feature, or you can call the number on the back of your card. So for example, I've got the Amex Platinum Personal. I picked Delta because a lot of travel that we do is out of Detroit when we're back home in Michigan. And so the idea behind this is the credit is supposed to be used for fees. So those are things like award ticket change fees, phone booking fees, baggage fees. The idea, you're not supposed to be able to use it for buying tickets or buying airfare. However, most of the time this will post automatically if you buy a gift card. So if you don't have any fees that would normally qualify for this, this is what I've done pretty much every year I've had the Platinum card. Is just head over to delta.com and buy a couple of gift cards, and then those get refunded to me at the end of the statement cycle. I would recommend doing this in a couple of separate gift card purchases. So you either want to buy $50 or $100 gift cards if you're using the Amex credit rather than $200, because every once in a while you do have to either call or talk to them by secure message to get them to manually process the credit. I've never had any pushback when I asked them to do it, but if you do a $200 purchase, they may not believe that that was a fee. But otherwise, if you just buy something, buy a couple $50 or $100 gift cards from Delta, they have no way of knowing that wasn't a award change fee or something, and they'll credit it with no trouble. The next card is the Premier Rewards Gold Personal Card. This is a relatively new addition as a benefit. It's the same rules that we just talked about as for the Platinum card, but this one has a $100 airfare airline fee credit. One other thing about the Platinum card I forgot to mention, this is an ongoing thing, but Platinum Personal Card holders get $35 towards Uber in December. That was a new benefit where you get $200 annually, $15 per month towards Uber, but the credit for December is $35, and that works for Uber Eats as well. So even if you've got your own car or whatever, if you're cozied up in your home and want somebody to bring you some nice food, make sure you use that $35 for December. Okay, next up, we've got a couple of Chase cards. These ones are great because it's really easy to use the credit. You've got the Ritz-Carlton and the Chase Sapphire Reserve both have $300 travel credits. Those don't really have any requirements besides the purchase needs to be made with a merchant that's categorized as travel.
Yeah, so we're with, the Reserve with that $300 credit, where a lot of people say, $450 annual fee. This is what offsets the annual fee and makes it not a big deal. Airbnb, Uber, buying an Amtrak ticket if you're heading from West Michigan to Chicago, whatever. Really any general travel purpose, you'll get your money back.
Yep, and this one's automatic, so the other nice thing is you don't have to do anything, just buy it. You should say post on your statement and get that credit back. Last up for the major annual premium travel credits is the Citi Prestige card. This one is an airline purchase credit. It's $250, use it or lose it by December 31st. And this one does include airfare, so you can just buy a ticket with your preferred airline. You can also use it for gift cards, can also be used for fees. And this one gets automatically credited as well. So just any purchase that goes from an airline or is processed by the airline should count for this. You could also conceivably use this to buy points if you don't have any other really good use. I'd still rather have a gift card that I could use for flights later.
Would it depend on the airline, whether they issue their own or they go through points.com?
Yeah, most of them go through points.com. American processes their own. I think Alaska does as well. So those are kind of two options. And I think both of them have some sort of bonus, but nothing super great. If you don't know what you're doing, buy a gift card. That's the safe way. Yeah. But if you do, you might be able to use this to buy some American points or knock part of the price off of that. Okay, so item number 2, we've got some spending threshold bonuses. So before we get into the examples, at a high level, this just basically means certain cards are set up where you get some sort of nice benefit if you spend a certain amount of money in the calendar year as a whole. Right. So your first step here is going to be to just go back through. If you have any of the cards that we're going to mention here, you want to just go back through and figure out what you've spent throughout the year, see how close you are. I think a lot of people may find that they're pretty close close to one of these threshold benefits, and they could put a little bit of extra Christmas shopping on that particular card.
Yeah, the math to do here is, realistically by the end of the month, is there any way my normal spending on this card can get me what I need to get whatever benefit it is, depending on the card.
All right, so first up is the Citi Executive Advantage World Elite MasterCard.
That name.
Most arrogant card name in history. This card gives you some elite qualifying miles for American Airlines. If you spend $40,000 in the year, you get 10,000 EQMs. So this is just going to help you get elite status with American. Otherwise, you don't want to worry about it at all. But if you find yourself very close to qualifying for Executive Platinum or Executive Platinum Pro, this could be something where getting that spend threshold, spending a few thousand extra bucks might get you enough miles to qualify for the next level of status, which will get you higher upgrade priority and some other nice benefits.
Yeah, with Amex, we've got the Delta Platinum card. That's the $195 annual fee card. You get 10,000 redeemable miles plus 10,000 elite qualifying miles after spending 25K in a calendar year. And you also will get an additional 10K elite qualifying miles if you reach 50K in spend.
Okay, so up to 20,000 elite qualifying miles on the table for a total of 50K spend. I'm pretty sure you don't get any extra redeemable miles for going to the next tier.
I don't think so.
The other thing about Amex Delta cards is that Delta has a spending requirement for elite status. So you may have all the elite qualifying miles or segments that you need, but if you didn't spend enough money on Delta flights, you get boxed out of your status. The thing about the Delta co-branded cards is if you spend 25K on all of those cards in a year, so you might have the Delta Gold Personal and the Delta Business card or some combo of cards. If you in aggregate spend 25,000 in the year, you don't have to worry about the spending money on Delta requirement.
Right. We've got some other cards too here. We got Barclays. We got Mosaic status for spending 50K on the JetBlue Plus card. I'm guessing that's probably a less likely scenario, but still, it's good to know.
I guess if you're in a JetBlue hub, you probably are already tracking this quite carefully. But I do know that Mosaic status is a pretty nice benefit. So, I think their elite status is quite a bit different than the big airlines, but can definitely be worth it. Next up, we've got Chase. Same idea with the United family of cards. So that's the United Explorer Personal and Business, plus the Mileage Plus Club card, which is the $450 fee one that gives you club access. Those also have the $25,000 spend to waive any requirements of airfare purchase volume with United. So again, if you're looking at United Elite status and you've got either the qualifying segments or the qualifying miles to get that level of status, but you haven't spent enough on Delta flights, that 25K across any of the cards in that family can get you there. The one that I really like, though, is the United Mileage Plus Explorer card. If you spend 25K, you get 10,000 redeemable miles as a bonus. This was actually a listener question from Tracy last week.
Okay.
She had like a big, I think, heating system or something that she had to install one of those expenses for her house, and she wanted to see if there were any cards that would have a special advantage to putting that big ticket item on there. So that's something to consider as well. That's one of the better ones, I think, that gives you some miles that are worth something that are out there.
Let's move on to hotel cards and the threshold bonuses. With the Citi Hilton Honors Visa Signatures, that's the no annual fee Citi Hilton card. You get gold status if you put 20K of spend on that card in the year.
Yep. Probably not worth it. Gold status isn't bad, but 20K is a lot. And you get it automatically if you have this next card. So the Hilton Honors Reserve card, also from Citi, if you spend 40,000, you get diamond status. So much better status with Hilton there. And I'll actually do the next one.
Same idea.
There's another card that is from Amex. That's the Hilton Honors Surpass card. That one gets diamond status for 40K spend as well.
Yeah, with SPG, spending 30K gets you gold status, but you also have that automatically if you have the platinum card.
Yes, that's an easier win there to just sign up for.
But if you have put a decent amount of spending on your SPG card, and something we should probably mention really quick is we're going to talk about city hotel cards later and
Yes.
what you're going to do.
Yes, we've gotten a lot of questions about that actually. Last hotel threshold bonus is the Hyatt card. So you get Explorist status. Really hate their status.
Really rolls
names.
off the tongue, that.
Yeah. So 50,000 spend, which is a pretty steep spend requirement, but it's Hyatt's elite status upgrade that you get with that card. Also, quick note: make sure you use your free hotel night. That'll expire at the end of the year as well, and that comes every year. You get one category 1 through 4. Stay with Hilton.
Yeah. Next thing here is points rebate. So there's a handful of cards that offer these points rebates. We can start with the City Platinum Select card. In the Aviator family, same idea. The Barclays Aviator card gets the same thing. So you're going to get a 10% rebate on redeemed miles up to 10,000 miles back. So what that looks like, you do your round trip to Europe for 60,000 miles, you should see 6,000 miles back up to 10,000 with that same flow.
Yep, exactly. I actually just took advantage of that. It was kind of minor. It was a domestic reduced mileage award getting home for Christmas. So it was going to be 17,500. So I was able to get 1,750 points back. It does post super fast. So that's a good one. The other one that has a miles rebate is the JetBlue Plus, but there's no cap on that one. So it's 10% miles back, but there's no limit to how many miles back you can get. So it doesn't really matter if you use that before the end of the year, as long as you're planning to keep the card.
How would that work with the JetBlue Plus card? With so if you pay the taxes and fees with that card, hypothetically, you could, if you wanted to, transfer Amex points, pay the taxes and fees with the JetBlue card, and get your rebate.
So the way that this one's set up, like let's say you redeem 500,000 JetBlue points over the course of the year for award tickets,
right,
you'll get 50,000 points back.
Right.
And so with the city cards, if you redeem 500,000 city points, it hits that cap.
Right. But the point was what you need to do in order to get that rebate. Having the card is not enough. You need to use one of those two American Airlines cards we mentioned to get the rebate. Correct?
No. You can use your best card as far as
I was under
points.
the impression you had to use.
So was I actually.
Okay.
I looked that up when I did my purchase the other day, and basically it's tied to your Advantage account. So if you have the card, it actually works the same way as the free bags benefit, where if you book a domestic trip, you get a free checked bag. You don't have to pay with that card for the taxes and fees. So I, of course, paid with my Chase Sapphire Reserve card, make sure I get that great travel insurance, and you still get the points back as long as it's tied to your AA account. All right, we got one hotel item here, and that's the IHG card. Same idea, 10% back on redeemed points. This one's actually capped at 100,000 points back per year, so that's 1 million points redeemed. Kind of makes sense. I mean, you're paying probably, the points are worth less, you're spending more overall, but really nice benefit. And if you got IHG stays, those ones can be canceled up to 24 hours before you check in. So there's no reason not to make some proactive bookings if you want to. Yeah,
staying in the neighborhood of hotels, free hotel nights is another thing that, I mean, now is the time. A couple examples of cards be the Marriott Rewards Premier, category 1 to 5, you got a free night. So if you've not used that, you may as well look into, I mean, even a staycation. Even, let's say you're in a market with Marriott properties, like do a weekend, do a Friday night.
Get out of the house.
Whatever, yeah. And then the IHG card, free night, any category. That's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, boy, the IHG card is a really nice value for $45.
I was going to say, when you consider the annual fee is pretty cheap and you just get to have at it on any property.
All right, so last up, and you alluded to this, we've got a couple of other items for elites, but this is kind of the last general checklist item, and that is the City Hilton cards. I think it makes sense to cancel your City Hilton card by at least before January 30th. So this is not quite the hard deadline of the end of the year. But what's going to happen is Amex is going to be receiving the entire portfolio of cardholders. So if you have a Hilton card issued by Citi on January 30th, they're sending all of your information over to Amex, and Amex is going to send you a new card. The reason you want to cancel here is that, number one, you won't be able to earn a sign-up bonus if they convert your Citi card into an Amex one. And number two, we don't really know how this is going to be treated on your personal credit report. Amex may consider this a new account that starts on January 30th. So that'll create an account that has a zero, as far as the account history, it's
And
going to hurt your age of
could
accounts.
potentially work against you in a 524 capacity.
Yes, also could hurt you in a 524 capacity. It just depends on how Amex reports these, but we haven't been able to get any information.
Yeah. So, I mean, trying to be the devil's advocate, I'm trying to think of a reason, a good reason that you would not want to cancel this card. That's what I was thinking about too, because I'm like, we were pretty stern on canceling this card, but yeah, I don't see a huge benefit to doing nothing.
If you hate signing up for cards and it's not worth, a potential bonus in the future, and you just want the simplicity, but it gives you a lot more control if you make the move to cancel. All right, so the last two items are for elites. We talked a little bit about some of those threshold bonuses, being able to get you some extra elite qualifying miles or whatever if you hit those spending. I think the big thing for elites, and if you pursue elite status, you probably already know this anyways, but you want to make sure that all of your stays at hotels or all of your flights are posted correctly. Sometimes these systems make mistakes and you miss out on important flights that you need to qualify for your status. So you just want to check how you're doing on that status qualification. And then the final item is that if you already had elite status this year, you may still have some upgrade certificates that are going to expire. And those upgrade certificates generally can be transferred to somebody else. So if you're not going to book any travel and you don't have an immediate use for the ticket, the certificate before it expires, maybe there's somebody in your family. There's also some good forums. Flyer Talk is a great place where people contribute a ton of value. And if you've got those certificates, you'll probably find a happy home for it by posting something on one of those forums. Somebody will reach out and let you know that they've got a good use for it. All right, that is it for the end of the year checklist. Send in any questions to us, support@abroaders.com. Thanks to everybody for being with us for yet another year.
Yeah, another year. Yeah, it's been a nice ride. Thank you, everybody. And I guess now we will get into the interview where once again I chat down. I don't sit down I do sit down and chat, but I have a conversation with Dan Pierson about Bolt Collective. He's a really interesting guy. He's traveled all over the world, has a bunch of great stories, and I think he's doing something truly interesting with Bolt Collective. So I think for those that are more travel-minded, I think this is a good interview to listen in on. All right, everybody. Was definitely looking forward to this interview. We've got Dan Pierson of Bolt Collective. Dan, before I let you introduce yourself, just kind of a quick blurb. So Bolt Collective, it's a travel community of like-minded explorers, as he puts it, that essentially get really good deals on really cool experiences thanks to this collective that allows them to get better prices because, as Dan puts it, negotiating on behalf of 300 people opens up opportunities that just aren't possible on your own. So Dan, welcome to the Abroaders podcast. You want to give everyone just kind of a quick rundown of who you are, kind of your micro story?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you guys for having me. Been fans for years now. So I've professionally worked in technology for about a decade at various different startups. Most recently, my last full-time gig was at Lyft, the ride-sharing company. And then I always just kind of on the side personally have been super into travel, whether that's, the points hacking thing, which I know a lot of listeners can identify with, and then just travel beyond that and lots of adventures around the world. And more recently on the professional side have been digging in super deep to it's what I call just experience design. And in my professional career in the past few years, it's taken on a lot of different forms, everything from promoting and producing music in New York City, live concerts in New York City for both my own projects as well as brands like Airbnb and the Rockefeller Foundation, and then just putting together awesome experiences for friends. Last year, for example, chartered a sailboat down in Panama, the San Blas Islands, and brought about 15 people down for a pretty epic New Year's celebration. Right off the coast of Panama. So all of those things, all those kind of jumbled waypoints in my journey have all led me to this new thing that I'm really excited to tell everyone about, which is called the Bolt Collective. So it's an exceptional, or a community of exceptional people coming together and using their collective purchasing power to unlock otherwise impossible experiences. So the idea is you get, as AJ mentioned, all these really amazing people together and basically leverage and pool their money to create just opportunities and experiences that otherwise aren't really possible and are out of reach for kind of solo travelers. So yeah, that's kind of what we're working on. I can dive into some more detail, but it's new and it's exciting, and yeah, we're pumped for it.
Yeah, man, that's really cool. And you're a pretty well traveled guy as well. You've been to like what 50 plus countries, and you've had, as I read on your bio, I didn't realize that you'd spent some time in the Czech Republic and Mexico as well. I knew that you were spending some time in Argentina. You lived there for a while back after you finished university or whatever. But you're a really well traveled guy, and so like the inspiration for the Bolt Collective, I guess, is kind of a combination of your personal passion for travel and kind of your interest and knack in group travel and kind of the benefits of group travel. Because I'm with you, man. Like solo travel can be a really good experience. You can learn a lot about yourself. It's, I think, like something everyone should do at some point is travel alone. But at the same time, there's something magical about being with a group of people that you kind of at least share some of the same values. And I know that the Bolt Collective is a community that you're building on some values. So I don't know, that's really cool, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I've gained so much personally in terms of my growth and my learning from both, solo experiences like bicycle tours across the U.S., riding a bicycle for 4 months around New Zealand and Australia back in 2010, what I call ultimately ill-fated walk about 500 miles across the island of Cuba back at the end of 2014 after the kind of softening of U.S.-Cuba relations. So all of those things have been super formative experiences. But, I've also had just, I always fall back to this African proverb. It says, if you want to go fast, travel alone. If you want to go far, travel together. And I think that really frames up, a lot of the most interesting, amazing experiences I've had around the world have just been, with kind of folks that I might not have met previously, or maybe even people that I had. But I think like what's really exciting is just kind of meeting a diverse group of people from all sorts of different backgrounds. And, maybe in the context of Bolt, I'll jump into how I think about that and why it's not where you work or how much money you make or what you look like or where you're from or, if you've ever traveled outside the U.S. I think like those aren't really the questions we're asking. I think there's a lot more around, just looking to diversity in the form of, like people's curiosity and people's interests and kindness and adventurous kind of spirit. And there's a lot of different things. But, to jump into kind of how I think about experiences and how we spend our time just for a minute. So I was super lucky, this is going back about 4 years ago, to have the chance to ask the wealthiest man in terms of money, the wealthiest man on the planet, Bill Gates. I asked him, this was via Twitter, just threw out a question, never thought he'd answer it. And a couple of days later, I was in a bar and my phone started vibrating out of my pocket as I realized he'd answered the question. So I asked him, I said at Bill Gates, I said, with all of the massive resources at your disposal, where do you feel least able to affect change, right? This is the guy with the most cash on the planet. He can throw $1 billion at something and, he wouldn't lose a zero on his bank account. So he answered, he said, with everything I have, all the personnel and all of the, the cash, everything else, it's like the one thing I can't do is make more time. So he says, I focus on the things that are important to me, like my family and now my philanthropy. And, that's where I choose to spend my time. And like that, I mean, it took honestly a couple of years to really grasp that, but I had a kind of holy shit moment, about a year and a half later where I just realized like, man, if the guy with the most money in the world is telling me that, there's something to it. Right. So anyway, all that to say, like, I think about what's most important is now in my life is helping other people make the most of their limited time. We live in a society where most folks are lucky if they get, 3 or 4 weeks off of work, a year. And it's like, everybody loves traveling. How can we kind of give people really special experiences that aren't otherwise possible? So anyway, that's a long way of kind of thinking about how after I guess 31 years of life, and the first time I ever left the U.S., I was 18 for a couple of months to go to Australia and New Zealand. That's how I think about travel and what can be taken from it.
Yeah, man, that's really cool that you got a shout out from from Bill Gates, man. Difficult guy to get in touch with, and that's that is true, man. Time waits for no man. So, man, let's get back to the Bolt Collective for a minute, because in my notes here, kind of what I shared with you before we started the interview. I thought it would make sense to kind of talk about some of the experiences before we kind of get into how stuff works. But I'm just kind of thinking from the listener's perspective. They're saying, okay, so a group of people that have opportunities to go on some cool trips and get better deals. So as far as like how the service works, it's a membership and you have it capped. So you've got it capped. You're starting off like 300 people. And so how it works is what you buy your membership, you buy your membership for like, right now, it's what, $200, $300, $400, depending on how early you sign up. And then that means that you have access to these deals that you put together. So I guess that's like a good segue into like, let's look at some of these experiences, because I was on the website earlier and like they all look really, really, really cool. So I don't know if it makes the most sense just to focus on the New Year's Eve experience that you guys have set up, just kind of the nuts and bolts of that, on like how you organized it, what the price point is, and how that all works. Because it's 12 experiences a year. So let's say somebody's interested in being a part of the community, you buy your membership, and then you and the Bolt team are going to put together like 12 awesome experiences. And so then in theory, the community members, where like even if they're not a power user, they can like maybe take advantage of a couple of these a year. And for the people that really want to go hard, maybe they're doing 3 to 5 of these. So like, do you want to talk about the New Year's Eve experience that you got set up that your community members have access to?
Sure. Yeah. So I'd even jump back and just say that, so the annual membership dues, basically, the way that I think about this, and the way that I've kind of created this community to be sustainable for the long term, is basically like there are these community center style annual membership dues of $200 right now. As we get more members, basically that'll go up to kind of incentivize and throw something out for the early believers. So what that allows us to do is offer these trips at cost. So there's no profit on the trips. The way that we sustain ourselves and have everything from a little tiny salary for the folks that work here, as well as putting down deposits on these trips. You can imagine that can get a little bit kind of hectic if you're throwing down $5,000 or $10,000 to reserve a private island off the coast of Honduras, to keeping the servers going, all that stuff. So that's kind of how I think about the membership model. So the trips are basically experiences are at cost, which hopefully keeps them affordable for a really wide range of people. And then the experiences themselves, I'd love to chat more about those. I mean, I think kind of the the easiest example to kind of illustrate the model is actually the experience in January. So that's a fleet of catamarans down in the Virgin Islands. So I'm on the phone with these charter companies and I'm saying, hey, I see that an average price for a week to charter a boat is $10,000. We're actually chartering 3 boats, and I've been talking to other companies, and we're looking at something around 40% off list price, which takes that $10,000 boat for 10 people and drops it down to $6,000 for 10 people, which becomes just a much more affordable proposition for each individual that's going to be going on the trip. So I think that takes it kind of what is like a very exclusive experience, like that normally is open to whatever, like finance bros and lawyers. Not to hate on any of the finance bros.
No, I pick up what you're putting down.
Yeah, exactly. And a better way to say that, so I sound like less of a dick, is the like somebody who just signed up is this woman Aubrey from Denver. and she's like a music and voice teacher, and was looking to, build some community outside of Denver while also like having some interesting travel opportunities. And, just the fact that, the membership fee is pretty affordable at a couple $100. The trips are at cost, made that kind of feasible for her, and she's not necessarily the kind of, or someone of her profession is not necessarily the kind of person you normally think would, have the opportunity to go, sail on a cat in the Caribbean for a week. If that makes sense.
Yeah, man, that's no, that totally makes sense. And I'm looking at this offer on the website right now as well, and super affordable. So for a week, it's under $1,000 per person. So you got the price point at $950. So obviously, if you're on shore and you want to go do drinks and that stuff, you're gonna have to pay for that. But I mean, the boat and all the stuff on the boat, $950 for a week is pretty awesome. Especially considering, I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's also nice
you
because
could contrast that with. Oh, sorry, I was going to say you could contrast that with, with like something like Yacht Week, which I'm a big fan of for different reasons. Anyone doing ambitious things to provide awesome experiences, whether that's like Yacht Week or Summit Series or any of those things, I'm like, I'm in awe of what they've done to build those big organizations. But like, if you would contrast that with a Yacht Week, like Yacht Week's at least $1,700 or $1,800, almost double the price. So yeah, that's kind of, the idea is to keep it manageable. I didn't mean to cut you off. I just sorry about that.
No, it's fine. It's fine. And yeah, I guess like just the point is it could be so much more expensive, and your other offers as well. I mean, you've got even more affordable experiences than that, where I was kind of thinking about earlier, and like from your perspective, it's got to be a little bit challenging because there's two big things that you offer, at least from my perspective. You're offering community, and you're offering people kind of access to this group of people that you're going to have a hell of a time traveling with. And it's not like everyone's going on every trip together, but you've got the idea behind the community, and you're trying to identify people that kind of share the same values. So you go on these trips, have awesome experiences with people, but then also you give people access to deals. So that's got to be kind of tricky to communicate. It's like people are saying, well, like, am I getting good deals or am I paying for the experience? And it's kind of like, well, actually you're getting both.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think about them as deals so much. So there's this idea, I guess one way to put it, is that there's this idea that, of collective purchasing power, which is basically a committed group of people coming together and leveraging all of their collective group assets to be able to afford something that they otherwise couldn't afford, or I mean, it certainly could be a better deal. A super simple way to put it is like, imagine if I use one roll of toilet paper every 2 weeks because I live by myself, but if you go into CVS and buy one roll of toilet paper, it's what, like $1.50 or whatever. But if I got everybody in my apartment building together and I said, hey, let's buy an 18-pack and split it this month, we'd all save probably 80% on our toilet paper cost, which is like obviously a ridiculous example, but kind of the easiest one to illustrate what I'm talking about.
No, man, I think that's straightforward. Yeah. I think people get that. Man, as far as these experiences go, are there any other ones you want to focus on? I know you said earlier you wanted to kind of touch on Oaxaca, down in Mexico. Absolutely. Yeah, sure. And that's, like I said, so much of this, and as I think, anyone gets older, they realize that life is just kind of a roadmap of waypoints, as you kind of move down it, and all those things inform, your kind of future endeavors. And, so maybe you need to back up just a little bit further. And I know, one of the reasons I like the podcast is because, you guys talk about kind of entrepreneurship and, your personal experience, with the Broaders and other folks who have come on that have started kind of similar endeavors. But basically, like, I was working at Lyft in 2014, started taking 30-minute long walks during the day, started taking hour-long walks during the day, 2-hour-long walks during the day. Love the company, love my friends working there, but I was just like, I need to be doing something else. And that's when I, took off from that job. Basically, a week later, I was riding my bicycle across the United States from Washington State down to New Orleans, and then that walk in Cuba that I mentioned, and then
basically had like okay, what the heck is next moment. And I went down to Mexico and spent about 6 months living in a super small, really just incredible place in the world called Mazunte, which is on the coast of Oaxaca. So basically, like at the very, very, very bottom of Mexico, and it's just this really special, very interesting, eclectic kind of. For me, having been lucky to travel all over Mexico, it's really the last place that I know of in that country that kind of has good tourism infrastructure, but still retains like the charm of kind of Mexican life. And there's no big hotels there. It's just like people spitting fire and playing hand drums in the street at night. There's a mezcaleria where you can try 100 different kinds of mezcal, and there's folks on the dance floor listening to live salsa. And obviously the beaches are incredible, and it's just a very special place. And kind of one of those places where you can't even really like put into words. You have to, hopefully take somebody there and give them the chance to experience it for themselves. But I have a friend down there who owns, and this is getting back to our trip, the experience in December over New Year's. I've got a good friend that owns this kind of complex of villas right around this beautiful plunge pool, and just flowers everywhere right downtown, about a 3-minute walk from the beach. So I contacted them kind of in the beginning stages of when I'd started Bolt, and I said, I'm looking to bring down a group of folks. I'd like to rent out the whole spot. We kind of negotiated in a very friendly way from there to get, to a place where he's really happy about having, the business and having a good group of folks come in for, the New Year's period. And I'm able to offer, our members, a really amazing experience, at a really kind of great, accessible price point. We've got tons of other things planned, like, not to give too much away, but another good friend of mine, is a professional chef, in this town. And, we've got a dinner planned for New Year's on the beach, on a secluded private beach. Which should be pretty spectacular. We're going to barbecue right out on the beach. And after that, they burn, a pretty massive Burning Man to kind of ring in 2018. It's just, I think of these and this gets back to what you mentioned earlier, AJ, about like group travel versus solo travel. And I personally, I think we set up, the concept here is we set up like a great home base for people to, meet each other and have a really comfortable place to stay and kind of options for, things to do, but it's not like a group tour by any means. There's no set itinerary. As we get down there, we'll kind of explore more of like what, folks are into and what we want to do. But we have kind of interesting, like individual experiences planned within the larger experience. But, there's lots of little kind of fun things that we're going to get into while we're down there. And it's just a special place in general. So
yeah, that's cool, man. So like, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it seems kind of like, and this isn't to rag on hostels because hostels are amazing in so many ways, but it's kind of like you're bringing some hostel culture with like a little bit nicer digs where when you're traveling at a hostel, there's like all these people and you can break off into groups and you can meet people and go off and do things, but you can still do things on your own, or collectively you guys can kind of just go wherever the trip takes you. It seems kind of like I don't know, like hostel life, but in like spectacular digs, kind of having this group of people around,
Yeah, no, I honestly hadn't made that parallel, but I think that's great. And having stayed, in hostels all around the world and having had like absolutely amazing experiences in hostels, as well as, of course, some of the challenges. Like, I think that's a great way to put it. I think, the other thing is like, if I could I think about this a lot as like we have folks, apply to join and I'm just chatting with tons of people about, kind of what we're up to. Like, if I could take the 10 most awesome, incredible people and they'd look completely different and they'd all have very different bank account balances and have done such different things in their lives and been from such different places. But if I could take, I'm thinking about Brian, who's this crazy guy from Atlanta that I met in New Zealand, and Roberta, who's this, awesome Mexican girl. I actually met her in New Zealand as well. And just all these people, that I've met at hostels around the world and kind of like invite them into this community, that would be like a dream come true. So, I think like that gets into a bit of like the curation, of kind of who like we'd love to have think about joining this community. But that's a great parallel of like, that's a really, really great example. It's just like that hostile culture because, I mean, you just meet the most interesting people. And it really brings very different people together, I think, that kind of hostile mentality. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah, man, absolutely. One final thing on Oaxaca. So I've heard that the food, and obviously, like I'm sure it's different in every little part, and this seems like kind of a secluded part of Oaxaca, but I've heard food in Oaxaca is generally just fucking awesome. What kind of food could people expect this chef buddy of yours to brew up on New Year's Eve?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. Without stepping on his toes, because I'll handle the travel. I love to leave the cooking up to him. But yeah, oh man, I mean, Oaxacan food in general, the moles are kind of the most famous. I think Oaxacan dish, which is like a often chocolate based sauce that you can add to anything like chicken or any kind of protein. It's just so delicious. There's tlayuda, which is it's almost like a Mexican pizza. There's like Oaxaca has a very specific cheese that, like, you could almost compare to mozzarella, like Italian mozzarella, but because it's like very stringy and very kind of like a lighter, softer cheese, and they just put that over like a tostada, basically. And then there's just bomber, I mean, just awesome Mexican food in general down there, from tacos to I mean, and I always joke that like Mexican food is basically just variations of different things on different kinds of tortillas, whether it's like tacos or flautas or like enfrijoladas or like it's all just different stuff on different kinds of tortillas. But no, the food's gonna be epic, man. This guy's a master.
Man, that's really cool. Well, man, like, is there like what am I missing here? Like, what are the listeners here missing about Bolt? I mean, do you want to touch on some other experiences? Do you want to talk like more nuts and bolts of what it actually looks like to be a member? Because I don't know, man. I really do think that this is a genuinely good fit for a lot of people that are listening, and just let everyone know this isn't like some affiliate deal where Dan's going to give me a kickback on any signups. I just generally like Dan, and it seems like a really cool thing that I'm actually, I don't know, man, you got me distracted because I'm looking on your website as we're having this conversation and just thinking like, damn, man, I think I'm going to toss in my application and be a part of this, man.
Oh yeah, no, I'd love to have you, man. Yeah, I mean, I think it's an experiment, right? Like, I'll be 100% honest here and say it's an experiment. Like, our hypothesis, right, is you bring these really awesome people together, you give them an opportunity each month to go on one of these experiences, whether it's the ones we've mentioned so far, or that private island off the coast of Honduras, or a ski house in Colorado for the whole month of February, or one that we just kind of put on the map is a week-long rafting trip down the Middle Fork of the Salmon River in Idaho, which is something I've wanted to do for years. I had a chance to go down the Grand Canyon for a month, down the Colorado River about 4 years ago on a rafting trip, which is another great example of like this concept, right? It was actually my brother, my older brother, that put that trip together. We didn't rent tour guides or go on some, those cost like several $1,000s. Basically, like, brought a really awesome group of people together. He took care of the logistics from an outfitter that provided the rafts and provided the food. We brought like basically a semi trailer worth of booze, and we did like 17 kegs for the month, like rolling down the Colorado River on these rafts. Just epic, great food that this outfitter provided. It was like, I think for a month it was like $800 or something. It was so inexpensive because there wasn't any profit motive, right? Like, not to knock capitalism in any sense, but like, hopefully this is kind of just, that collective model of like the trips being nonprofit, the membership dues being like hopefully affordable. And honestly, if there's somebody out here that's like, man, and I'm not far off this right now in terms of my bank account balance, but like, man, $200, isn't something I can swing right now, but I'd love to contribute in another way, whatever that could be, like a photographer or a videographer or somebody who does web design or somebody, I don't know, anything, it's just like, would to forego that fee, and totally open to just I'm trying to, I guess all that to say, I'm trying to make it as inclusive as possible. So it's an experiment. I think we're going to see kind of how it rolls, but just based on kind of the first group of folks who've gotten really excited about it and joined on board, I think like that's really what's going to make this thing sink or swim. Is just like the folks that get involved, because that's the key to any community. I think is obviously the people who the people who are in it, and their engagement, and making sure that it's a cohesive kind of friendly unit. And like I guess one other thing I would mention is just like kind of get back to that idea of what I think like my ideal kind of applicant, for lack of a better word, to the Bolt Collective is. And it's again, it's not like where you're from, how much money you make. I almost think about it as like, those are the questions that I don't want to ask. The questions that I do want to ask are just, would you want to sit next to this person on an airplane for 8 hours? And like how curious and, kind and intelligent and fun and just like adventurous. And those are all intangibles. They're like adjectives, rather than kind of things you can glean from someone's LinkedIn profile or Facebook or Twitter or any of that stuff. So that's what we're figuring out, and that's all, a big part of how this is wrapped up, and it's an experiment, but hopefully, I think we're on the right track, and hopefully, some folks who maybe are listening in now, think this is something worth their time and worth hearing more about, and would love to chat and meet more folks in general. So,
man, that's great. Okay, one thing actually I need to mention is for anybody that's interested in checking this out, just go to boltcollective.co. That is .co, not .com. Boltcollective.co. Before we sign off here, I've got a couple questions I want to ask you. First one is, for any listener out there that's saying like, this seems pretty cool, but like maybe the timing's not right, or for whatever reason they've already got travel plans, or they've already got ambitions to organize a trip for their buddies or whatever. What are like a couple pieces of advice you would give to somebody that wants to organize their own trip on negotiating? Where like one thing that I didn't bring up that I think is really cool is I like that the Bolt Collective seems to be like patronizing really cool small businesses in all different corners of the world. And so like I would imagine that like I don't know if you're like an American football fan or not, but like with a negotiation, you don't want to outkick your coverage. You don't want to get such a good deal that the people don't have enough cash to like fulfill on it. But like, I guess
resentful or something.
You kind of strong arm them into taking a deal that they kind of need, and they're in a tough spot or whatever. But for people like doing group trip, like let's say a group of friends wants to go do something, like where's your starting point as far as negotiating like a good fair price? We're like, hey dude, we're going to give you some business, and I'm not asking for like a crazy good deal, but is there anything we can do here? How do you do that?
Oh, sure. I mean, a lot of what you look at on boltcollective.co is, that's personal relationships that I've been really lucky to make over the past, 10 or so years of being lucky to travel around the world. So yeah, I mean, I guess a good example of this, was that trip that I mentioned last year for New Year's in the San Blas Islands, which, AJ, have you had a chance to check those out, the San Blas off the coast of Panama?
No, man. I've the only experience I have in Central America is a little bit of time in Belize and Costa Rica, nowhere else. So it's on the list.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. There's a pretty, I think, popular sailing trip to go from Panama to Cartagena in Colombia, because that Darien Gap is basically impossible to cross. And you go through the San Blas Islands, which are these indigenous, very kind of off the grid. They've got solar power to have fridges for cold beer, and they've got like 3G cell phones. That's really about it. And these folks, the name of the indigenous people, the Kunayala, and these beaches, like, I think are the most, and they're like tropical islands. Like the only place I've seen similar kind of like just beautiful, secluded, empty specks of sand, palm tree laden beaches is like Thailand or like Indonesia. I wouldn't have ever thought I'd see something like that in the Western Hemisphere, to be honest. So anyway, all that to say, I'd gone on that trip in August of last year from Panama to Cartagena, and I just, booked. I went online and I booked with, I just did some research and TripAdvisor and all that stuff, and I, booked one spot on this boat that was making the crossing, and like we had just an excellent time. Like our crew, for the most part, there were a couple kind of more challenging folks. Hope they aren't listening here. I won't call out any names. But like out of the, I think 10 people that were on that trip, like 8 of them were just people that like, at the start of my bike trip, for example, I just did a bike trip down the West Coast. One of the guys from that trip, I just met him out in Oregon. He drove an hour and a half, to meet me on the coast of Oregon. Anyway, so just such awesome people. So we did, I was just 1 out of 10 and, paid, I think it was $500, to have one spot on that trip, back in August. And then, I had such an amazing time that I was like, man, I would love to bring, friends and family down here for New Year's. And I contacted, the boat, this guy Hardy, who's the owner of the boat, and his first mate, this guy Cesar from Argentina. And I was like, it's New Year's. I totally get that. Like, this is prime time for you guys. I'm bringing down a crew, like you'll have a blast. I think that's important to emphasize because for a lot of these folks, particularly for like these experience based, whether it's like a small hotel or it's a chartered boat or, backcountry skiing or any of these things, like obviously those folks have to put, food on their plates, but like, they're just like me and you, they want to have a good time. And, so I told him, I was like, listen, like, let's make sure the money's right. You guys get paid out, but like, we're going to have an epic time over New Year's. Like, this isn't going to be, a crew that you're going to have to like hold their hands, and like, we're going to be drinking beers, on December 31st and like having a great time. I was like, let's just make it as affordable as we can. And we went back and forth on price for a bit and ended up somewhere where, it was super affordable for the folks that came down. And, the captain and the first mate definitely, felt good about kind of the economics of it. So yeah, I mean, like, that's a really long way of saying that personal relationships go a long way. And just, if you don't have those personal relationships, I think what it comes down to is just like spending so much time talking to different, vendors, for lack of a better word. And like, the other thing, and this is, and I'll wrap this up because now I've been talking for some time, but, the other thing that's really tough about organizing group travel for friends is like occupancy, which is, this idea that like you want to have all of your friends be able to come, but, you also, particularly because you're the point man on it, you need to like fill seats, right? So like,
sure.
Imagine that trip to Panama. If I'd only been able to get 6 folks to go, like at the end of the day, I most likely would have been, paying for the extra capacity. So like, that's something that I think is super challenging. That's one of the things that like I've thought through a lot and started to model through, like in terms of Bolt Collective, to, be able to offer like people the opportunity to come last minute, but also kind of limit the downside of not being able to fill up, all of the seats on an experience. So anyway, it's putting group travel together and being that person. And I've done it probably 30 times, in different scenarios, is like extremely fulfilling and it's great, but like, it's also a lot of work and a lot of risk. And, so take all this, that's a long way of saying, take all those things into account when you're, when you're thinking about being the point person on those kinds of experiences for your own friends and family.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Somebody that's been on the podcast before, Scott Brills, who you actually chatted with a little while ago. I've heard the exact same thing from him. Organizing Burning Man trips and logistics and trying to. It's a hell of an operation to pull off, and like I'm impressed by both of you guys because I've never done more than organizing like a group of 7 people renting a lake house like with buddies from high school, and that's like a pretty shared responsibility thing. But
sure.
Man, so before we sign off, 2018, out of all of the experiences or trips that you have planned, like what are you most looking forward to as far as travel goes?
Oh man, that's such a great question. Only because I haven't talked about it yet, and I kind of alluded to some of the other ones. So I went to college in New Orleans, lived there for about 3 years afterwards. Have some of my best friends in the world there that are like very deep in the music industry and own venues and manage venues and work for Jazz Fest, which is So basically, like, we're putting together an experience. We're renting a really awesome mansion in the Marigny for Jazz Fest, like a 15-person house that for both weekends. So for the first week, and this is the New Orleans Jazz Fest, which, like, for me is, and this could be argued for days on end. But for me is like the premier music festival in the world for a lot of different reasons. So bringing, members of the community down, renting this amazing house, giving them access to really awesome, like, backstage opportunities at these different venues, like throwing an awesome crawfish boil at least a couple times, throughout the 2 weekends. So, like, putting all the logistics of that stuff together, just as someone who's like, there's that phrase, like, be a New Orleanian wherever you are. That's kind of something I go by and try to work into my daily life, whether that's what I'm eating or what I'm drinking or the music that I'm listening to, or just the general kind of laissez-faire, just have a blast attitude. So that's something, that's the last weekend of April, first weekend of May. Can't wait for that. So excited to show people kind of a new side of New Orleans.
And that's really cool. I'm embarrassed to say that I've never been to New Orleans. I've been to.
Oh man, how's that possible, AJ?
Man, I've
you live in Austin.
Yeah, I know it's not that far. I've spent some time in Baton Rouge, which I don't think really hangs a hat to New Orleans, but
very different. Very different.
Yeah, that was a long time ago, but that was great, man. All right, so for all of our listeners, if the Bolt Collective is something you're interested in, by the way, nice website. You really lay the stuff out well. You communicate well. Head over to boltcollective.co. There's no promises from Dan or myself that the price is still going to be $200, but it's really affordable. Right now it's $200. It'll go up to $300 and then ultimately cap at $400, I think, on your final 100 people. But this is something I'm looking forward to being a part of. And anyone that thinks this could be a good idea, like I said, boltcollective.co. And you can also just check out the show notes of today's episode if you're going to dig up some other links, and we'll have a link in there as well. So, Dan, any parting words of wisdom for everybody before we end this interview?
I don't think so. I mean, I would, one thing that I would just give a shout out to AJ and the folks that he works with. I spent about a year and a half. This was back in 2016, trying to build a similar business to what these guys have going. So I guess at that point we were competition. I'm very glad to say that we're not anymore, because I think, these guys are so good at what they do. I'd rather be friends than competitors. Just have so much respect for, all the hard work that they've put into, Abroaders over the years. And I know it's provided like a ton of value for, obviously the folks listening to the podcast and, people who read all of their blog posts and people who, get value out of the site. And if folks have booked trips through that part of the service, like, anyway, so all that to say, man, these guys work super hard. I think, man, you guys are, I just have a tremendous amount of admiration for you on a lot of different levels, on that front. So, super appreciate you guys having me on, man, and love to hear from some folks out there and hopefully see you out there soon.
All right, man. That means a lot coming from you. Really, really appreciate that, man. I know Eric, Jake, Janelle, the team will be happy to hear that, man. Well, everybody, that's Dan Pierson of Bolt Collective. Once again, check them out at boltcollective.co.
Hey, brothers, don't be shy. Hop over to the website and join our email list for exclusive travel hacking content. If you like what we're up to, the best way you can support the show is by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. Lastly, we would love to hear from you, so send your show feedback to Eric or AJ at abroaders.com. We will see you next week.